All right, well, thanks for joining us this morning. So we're going to walk through, we all know facilities department is not a profit center per se, but we're going to walk through how can we flip it around and try to at least make it be perceived as such, especially when it comes to value. So again, quick background, I'm just a facilities geek, been doing this for 26 plus years. I love this industry, that's why I'm here. Love the people that work in it. So my thing is ideally we basically we'll all take away something that we can go back and make some sort of improvement, right? Keep raising the bar within your own organization, own department. So this is where, you know, the hand raising, so I'll make you charismatic. Anyway, who has been called this before in facilities, right? Overhead, okay? Cost center, all right? This one, I love this one, necessary evil. So been called that. That's unfortunate, but it's also true, right? Another question: who's struggling with getting budget dollars? How are we doing on budget dollars right now? Okay, yeah, it's actually good this year, right? Okay, spend it while you got it. So and that's good. That number's, you know, I saw maybe 20% at best. And actually, I got to do a level set. How many are acting, I'll say facility managers, directors, et cetera, so not on the biz dev side, associate member side? Okay, so probably a good 70+%, 80%. All right, that's good. So that gives me my baseline. How many of you are trying to justify headcount? Really, that painful, huh? Okay, all right, well, we'll talk about that then. All right, so justifying headcount is probably about 20-25%. Trying to justify procuring new software and or tools. Okay, same boat. Okay, so still maybe about a third of us. All right, or the good old replacing aging assets, right? They're old, dead, should have been replaced years ago. Okay, so that's still probably about half of us. All right, so unfortunately, a lot of this is, you know, same story year over year, right? We're still trying to get funding, still trying to justify. And we're going to walk through maybe how do we offset some of these challenges. But the next question I want to throw at you is why? Why are we struggling with maybe justifying those resources, right? Getting we got our budgets, but do we have all the budget that we need to replace those deferred assets, right, that are beyond end of life? So management doesn't get it? Is that what you're saying? How many of y'all say that? Management just doesn't get it. Okay. They are locked up in the basement, right? Okay. How about we don't get it? Okay, there's some people being honest. Okay, I'm like, okay. We don't know how to communicate it. I mean, we speak a different language, right? Or we could say they speak a different language, depending on how you want to look at it. But we don't do a very good job of communicating it. And then lastly, it just comes down to, and this has been an issue, and if you've seen me present before, this is one of the things that, you know, I hit over and over again. It's like a mantra. We are always selling. We just do a really bad job at it. Okay? So we are always selling what we do as facilities. We just do a bad job of identifying it ourselves, communicating it, and helping management understand it. We just say we need more money. And that's all they hear is, you need more money. So you're a cost center, you're overhead, you're a necessary evil, right? But without us, could our organizations do what they do? No. We understand that. How do we communicate and translate that into their language? That's kind of what I want to hit today. All right, so here's our path forward. One, we got to quantify the value. We got to figure out how what we do translates into their language so that they see that value proposition of us as facilities. Second is, and this is, you know, I talk about we're always selling, and if I'm making all these promises and we're selling, darn it, I had better execute and deliver. Okay, so we're going to talk about some tools that we can use for that. Then there's the communicating it, and then lastly, there's going to be that marketing and selling. Okay. So first, so y'all, any of you have said in my presentations before, you've probably seen this and have heard this. How many of y'all remember the rule of 110 and 1? See, I know Michael sat in on too many of my sessions. He's going to come up and take over now at this point. So this is just and again, I had an older gentleman show this to me, gosh, 15 years ago, at least a decade ago. I thought it was brilliant because it helped to convey the order of magnitude of things. So the largest asset and expense for most organizations is the people, right? That's how widgets get made. That's how our services get delivered. Whatever it is our organization does, it's at that $100. That's what the 100 stands for. And it's actually more like $400 or $500, but 110 and 1 is just prettier. Facilities, second largest asset and expense. That's us, right? And that, yeah, frankly, it is a cost center, but it's a cost center that's there to support the $100. Problem is that there seems to be like a hard lid drawn where it's like, all right, well, facilities, you cost us X amount, yes, but you need to spend that $10 to make that $100. There's a disconnect there. We need to bridge that, and that's some of what we're going to talk about. And then lastly, and this was probably more relevant when everybody was hopping on the green bandwagon and sustainability was such a top priority. Now it's become kind of more innate in who we do, but there's still, especially depending on which sectors you're in, there's going to be a focus on utilities, sustainability, things like that. So they'll do some stupid stuff to try to save a buck in utilities, right? I mean, they'll throw away the $10 and forget about making that $100 just to save $1 on utilities. We can help educate them that, okay, that's not the smartest way to go. If you want to save money in utilities or be more sustainable, I have some options, and then I'm going to use that to try to get some of the other things that I want done too at the same time. All right, so if we look at the people in production, how do we start quantifying that? And I'm actually going to give you some numbers and some stats here that, we'll do some math, all right? But it's okay. I've done the math for you this time. Usually we'll do, when I've done things like this before, we'll do mental math. It's too early in the morning, so I'm already going to do the math for you. People in production. So downtime and loss. Anybody in the manufacturing sector where if your buildings go down, you're losing money. Does anybody work in that arena now? Okay. So that's a little bit easier arena in the sense of we know the cost of downtime. We know the cost of rework, right? If we have a quality issue. That's easier in manufacturing. I work a lot in manufacturing. I had a stint working in data centers and critical environments as well. Trust me, we knew the cost of downtime. Now, the problem in the manufacturing arena is that, okay, well, they know the production line, right? So they're going to make sure that's pristine. The rest of the building could be falling down around them because that's not where they're making their money. It's like, well, if I can't maintain the proper environment, then yeah, my line's not going to be pristine. But what about if I'm in a, higher education? Ooh, how do I quantify downtime and loss on higher ed, right? Or maybe I'm just a corporate office environment. Well, we're not making widgets. I can't measure stuff coming off the line. Line 2's down. We're losing money. I can't measure that readily. Okay, well, there are some tools that we can use to help try to capture that information because I think that's probably the boat that a lot of us are in, both of the downtime, loss of productivity, and it's not even complete downtime, it's reduced productivity, right? Everybody's dealing with a staffing shortage as it is. So how do we squeeze more out of what we got? And I'm not even just talking about the maintenance staff, I'm talking about the actual people that we support, right? Our internal customers in our buildings. Risk. We've got increased risk. We focus a lot on the dollars and cents, but when we start thinking about what keeps the C-suite up at night, a lot of it revolves around risk. Because anytime you get a lawyer involved, who wins? The lawyer. That's right. Right? Everybody else loses. So they know that risk is a major issue. And that's where we need to have that mindset as well, because I can use that to justify the investments that we need to make or the resources I need for us to do our job. And then we've got our own staff productivity. So I need to make sure that $10 that we have for facilities, that we're using that efficiently. And honestly, we stink at it in facilities. When you start diving into where I see the wasted windshield time, us running around like chickens with our heads cut off trying to do firefighting, it's a ridiculous waste of resources. We can be smarter, we have to be smarter. So let's look at this. Here's some numbers, giving you some stats, okay? So you've got, and again, these are a little dated, but I haven't found any newer studies where they They treated people as human guinea pigs is what they did, okay, in these studies. They were done in call centers. So in a call center, and anybody ever worked in a call center or been in some of those before? They'll have thousands, and sometimes they're working 24/7. And so what they would do is they measure the throughput of these operators of either how many calls or how many tickets, whatever it is that they're processing in this call center. Well, they start monkeying around with temperature, humidity, outside airflow, things like that, and they see what the results are. So it was great data, great study. Some of the things they found is that for every 1 degree outside the comfort zone, and we can debate what that is later, it was a 2% loss in productivity. Okay, that's huge. 2% loss in productivity. The warm versus cold, I like using this one because we have our buildings that we can't really keep control of them. And what I joke with folks is like, well, if you can't really keep your building under control, well, apparently you need to go colder, right? Because, you reduce your error rate by half if we go cold, if I can't maintain comfort. So, changing filters. That's all they did. They changed the filters. 9% increase in productivity just by changing the stupid air filters. Right? And they had other ones where they said they had, our nasty cue balls that we still have from like 1980 something that's up there. They removed those, cleaned them, got some new ones. They also saw similar increases in productivity. Yes, sir.
So in the 1920s, they did a study in a factory about changing the lighting levels. Saw impacts. But what they found from that Hawthorne study was it was just the fact that management was paying attention is what the big driver was. But changing filters, nobody knows the filters can change. So that doesn't come from the Hawthorne effect. That's real data.
That's all behind the scenes, right? We know that we are required, we got ASHRAE, we got our standards that says, hey, we got to bring in a certain amount of outside air based off of square footage and occupancy, right? Well, they actually went above that. And they found that for every CFM per square foot increase, they saw, and it ranged, but they saw 1 to 4%, actually even some saw as much as 10% gains in productivity, all because they were bringing in fresh outside air. Now we're sitting there going, well, wait, that means I'm going to increase my utility cost. If we go back to our rule of 110-1, because now I have to condition that outside air I'm bringing in. Yes, I'm okay with spending $1 to make 100. That's a pretty darn good return on investment, right? So being able to monitor that. Now, how do I track that in my facility, right? So we'll get into that. Second is, let's walk. I want to walk through some of this. And here's where we're going to start doing some of the math, all right? So first, simple math. We're going to focus on the people and productivity side. So we're looking just at again, corporate office environment. If I got 500 people in there, the average burden rate is, and I'm just going with 100,000. That's actually, I think, conservative, right? Especially nowadays. So 100,000 per occupant per year. That's the average burden rate. Cost. That's just cost. If I do the math over here, I'm sorry you guys can't see it, maybe over in this corner. I've got 500 occupants times $100,000 a year. That's $50 million, right? Okay, simple math. So now I say, all right, well, if I am maintaining my space, if I can maintain temperature, if I can change my filters, right? So what's the simplest maintenance we can do? HVAC maintenance, change filters. If I can change my filters, I can show, I can probably easily guarantee a 10% increase in productivity of occupants. Okay? That equals $5 million in cost right there. Now, that's soft money, but if I can say, well, if I'm able to increase the productivity of the staff that you have, because this actually works really well in the government sector, right? Or talk about our public sector where, well, they're not a profit center, right? So, but they do provide services for a cost. Well, if I can get more productivity out of that cost, is that a net savings? Yes, because I'm getting more done without having to hire more people. Okay, so see how that works? It's just a matter of you understanding that math and being able to translate this to management. Second thing, facilities. So if we're not changing our filters, and I've used this example before, right? Changing our filters. So if we go back to looking at the people in production, if I'm not changing my filters, I'm not getting the airflow, right? My coils get clogged, I'm not getting the heat transfer. So am I going to be able to maintain the creature comforts in that space? No. And then we already saw, the results of the indoor air quality, the IAQ, right? Change of filters, things like that. Well, definitely going to be losing, productivity there because the air is not good outside air. It's, dirty recycled air coming through in those filters. But what am I doing to my equipment? So if I'm not changing filters, coils are getting clogged, what am I doing to my equipment? I'm killing them early, right? Equipment's short cycling, I got heat exchangers cracking, whatever it is. So again, do simple math on that. Let's say I've just got, my wonderful package unit, or if it's up on the roof, we call it a rooftop unit. Why? It's still, anyway, sorry. So let's just say we should get 15 years out of that package unit, right? If we're just maintaining it, unless we're on the coast here in Florida, then you're happy if you get 5. But let's say we get 15 years. That's what we should plan for. But because we're not changing the filters and not just doing maybe we're doing our quarterly or annual maintenance on it, but we go with the round to it approach on our filters, let's say. We reduce the lifespan to 12 years. Okay? So we're talking 20% increase in our capital expenditures or in our reactive maintenance, depending on if you're able to get that replaced or if you're having to do all the Band-Aid fixes that it usually forces us into. So we just increased our costs by 20%. And if we figured, if I got 50 package units, roughly $30,000 per package unit, I say $30,000 per package unit times 50 units, and I'm increasing my cost by 20%. So I'm increasing just for 50 package units my CapEx cost by $300,000. All because of why? Not changing the filters. Right? And that's just 50 package units. And those aren't that big. So now expand that to the remainder of the assets within your facility. Those dollar signs start adding up real quick. So you start getting into that conversation with management of, hey, I can't afford to replace these. I can't afford to hire more staff. It's like, you kind of can't afford not to. And now I'm showing them the numbers of that, right? And that's what really comes to us, as being able to make those to quantify that information and show them, here's the impact.
John, do you have any data on use of the improper filter media in the unit?
Ooh, I have not. That's a good one. That sounds like a study that a university should do. It's basically I'm increasing my capital expenses because I've reduced the life cycle of that equipment. Now, if we did conversely, if I were maybe to go, okay, we know the average is 15 years, what if I stretch it to 17, right? Without having to do all my Band-Aid fixes to get it to 17. Because it's not unreasonable for us to stretch the life cycle of a package unit to 17, 18 years, right? So now I just reduced my capital expenditures by 20%. Exactly. Yep. Yeah, and I'll give you guys I'll give you guys a QR code at the end of my contact info, so I can send you the slide deck if you want, and I can even send you like the link to where I get some of these studies from, so you guys have something else to reference. All right, let's look at the utility side of it, because that does matter to some. So we look at the utility side of it. If I have dirty filters, you're talking at least a 15% energy loss due to filters. Plus then my coils get dirty, so now I'm not getting the heat transfer or the airflow even through there. So I'm talking a 30+% loss in energy just because of that. Again, just because I'm not changing filters and doing proper maintenance. So simple math. Let's just say utility cost is $1 million a year. Okay. I'm flipping this. And do I have anybody in healthcare? I love using this example in healthcare because their profit margins are usually only about 5%. So that's all I'm looking for is if I'm in a I'll say a private company in the sense of that they're in it to make money, and it's a 10% net profit margin. Because, and again, I'll pick on healthcare. If they say $1 million a year for utility costs, yeah, okay, that's normal, that's fine, no big deal. And if I came to them saying, hey, I can reduce our utility cost by $200,000. So if I say, if I've got $1 million and I want to reduce, just by changing filters, I'm going to say, you know what, if I'm doing proper maintenance, I can increase our efficiency by 20%. I mean, that's the other thing. We spent so much money going and buying all these new systems that are more efficient, and I'm sitting there going, but we're not even doing our PMs on this other equipment. We're gonna save more money in utilities if we just took care of the infrastructure we had. But that's not cool, it's not sexy, so they don't really think about that, right? And it's also harder to get funds for it. But if I say, all right, I'm in that $1 million, if I can basically save us 20%, that's just $200,000. If I'm doing that, if I'm talking about that with the healthcare entity, they're gonna say, great, you can save me $200,000. And you want how much to save me that $200,000? That's white noise to them. It's nothing. But if I can flip it around and do the math and go, well, I know that we operate, and I'm being generous here, at a 10% net profit margin. That means in order for them to net $200,000 to the very bottom line, they would have to generate $2 million in revenue. Now I have their attention. It's simple math, right? Because I just, is it funny money? Kind of. But I'm saying I'm going to return $200,000 to the bottom line in savings. And and they're going to say, okay, big whoop. That is the equivalent of me generating $2 million in revenue. Facilities a profit center? Perhaps. Okay. So that's us having that mindset of taking what we do and flipping it around into numbers that are actually, one, going to grab their attention, and two, get them to see, yes, what we do, or rather not do, in facilities is absolutely impacting, our profit margins, our productivity, etc. Okay, I mean, we were just talking in the Pro FM roundtable of even just retention. I mean, we were focused on maintaining, hiring and retaining staff within facilities, but what about those 500 seats that are sitting in the building? I mean, everybody's job hopping, and we're having a hard time filling those 500 seats as is. Well, if I can provide a good, safe, healthy operating environment, right, that is going to make it easier for them to stick around. So we can actually play a hand in retention as well. So that was the math. Now you're going, okay, John, that's great. That's all, I'll say theoretical, and that worked for elsewhere based off of those studies. I'm not in a call center. How do I use this data? How do I quantify this? Well, how many of you are actually capturing downtime? If you have equipment go down, is anybody capturing that in your CMMS, IWMS at this juncture? Might want to. A lot of times we actually we want to hide that, right? We don't want management to know that we had equipment down. But most of the time when equipment fails, is it because we did something wrong? 90% of the time, yes. But a lot of that equipment is beyond end of life. That's why it went down, is because we've been saying it needs to be replaced for years. You haven't given us the money to replace it, so the equipment is down because of that. So I don't want to hide that fact. Actually, I want to put that out there in their face and say, look, this went down, we've been telling you it needs to be replaced, and here's the impact that it had on us. I want to quantify that information because it's going to make it easier for me to sell that next capital planning budget that I need to sell. You can use your building control system, so your BMS, building management system, or if you're, again, in manufacturing, a lot of times they'll use SCADA on their lines. Use that to capture downtime. You could actually even integrate and feed that over to your CMMS, IWMS to trigger work orders to start tracking downtime on that side too. There's simple ways to do that, and there's true integration ways you can do that. I've done simple things where it's just building control systems. They can send out emails, right? Well, if I have certain alarms that I want to send an email out to my CMMS, some of your CMMSs will actually convert that into a work order. So it's an email to work order functionality. Cool. Now I can track that in my asset management system. In your CMMS, IWMS, so your computerized maintenance management system, integrated work management system, capture your downtime in there. And again, even if it's not, I'll say, directly impacting productivity in the sense of that line is down? Or what if I've got a floor, let's say it's a big floor that's fed by 2 different air handlers, one on the north end, one on the south end. North end air handler goes down, and let's say it's the 3rd floor that those 2 air handlers support. What does that do to the space? I still have 1 air handler on board, right? It's still running. So let's say we're limping along. What does that do to that space? Can I still occupy it? For a length of time until I'm not able to maintain the appropriate outside air. Okay? But is it impacting the staff sitting on that floor? Yeah. Absolutely. Right? So can I quantify that? Right? This is where I start looking at, well, every degree outside of the comfort zone is a 2% lost productivity. I can start quantifying these impacts to the spaces just off of thermal comfort alone. Hot and cold calls. Ooh. How many of you like getting all your hot and cold calls, right? That's like typically your number 1 service request is a hot and cold call. I want to track that because if my hot and cold calls is, again, typically your number 1 service request coming in, if I know that upgrading my building control system, or I don't know, changing those filters like we talked about already, doing some retro commissioning, if I can make improvements to my facility operations and I can see that reflected in a reduced number of hot and cold calls, I just justified that investment, right? I just reflected the return on investment because I've reduced the number of hot and cold calls. That means people are more comfortable, and if they're more comfortable, they're more productive. Okay? See where I'm going? So I can track some of this information and use this to justify. And then lastly, I got to put some dollar signs to this. I'll say this is probably the most fuzzy part, especially if I'm working in a non-manufacturing environment where we know the cost of downtime, office environment, higher ed, public buildings. But I can go back to some of that math that we did earlier and start seeing, yes, we know there's cost with the staff sitting in the butts in the seats. We know there's cost there. When I make them less productive because of because the building's impacting them, we are technically losing money. So I can start quantifying that, and then trust me, that's going to be one of my KPIs. Other thing you got to do is as part of that tracking your data, and again, downtime can be in there in your CMMS, IWMS. Make sure you're doing your PMs. Okay? You've got to show that you're getting your PMs done. Or if you're not getting them done, I don't just want to go in, well, we didn't do them this month, delete them. No, I got to show that I didn't do them. And does it make me look bad? It depends on how I sell it. Why didn't you get to all your PMs? Because we were too busy over here firefighting. Well, why were you firefighting? Because I have all this old equipment or I don't have enough staff. Right? I'm painting the picture. Instead, we do a really good job of trying to hide it and sweep it under the rug. We can't do that. Also on your PMs, and this is a little bit of a side, I throw up there, prioritize and complete. Because we usually are pretty good, as we've been called, Johnny on the spot. We're pretty good at responding to, especially the higher emergency service requests or work orders. Great, good for us. But by us responding to those, and a lot of times misprioritizing, right? We're responding and taking care of things that really is a lower priority than getting some of these PMs done. So we've got to make sure we prioritize our work, and that's going to be driven. This is a whole nother presentation. That's all driven by, okay, what is my asset criticality? How does that impact the organization? And then that's going to dictate where it is in my work order prioritization. So I've got to have that chain of thought set up so that we're prioritizing and completing. And then the second is your CMs, your corrective work orders. How many of you are capturing your corrective work orders in your CMMS, IWMS? Okay. So more than half of organizations spend at least half of their time doing corrective work orders. So if you're not capturing your corrective work orders, or if you're not capturing all of your corrective work orders, how do I even justify where I'm spending my time and my resources? And it's really tough for me to go and say I need more people if I can't justify and show where I'm spending those resources now. Right? So I have to have that data. Does that mean I'm putting more on the technicians to capture it? Yeah, we'll hit that in a second. But that data really is invaluable to me. I've got to have that information. Now you've got to start drawing that line in the sand and go, but it only took me 5 minutes. How many of those 5 minutes do you get in a day, right? Especially all the hey you tug on the shirt sleeve work orders y'all get as you walk down the hallway. So there's ways to manage that as well. But I need to make sure I'm capturing that information, because ultimately I need to keep track of the cost to maintain that asset, right? Both on the PM side and definitely on that corrective side, because I'm going to use that of how many more Band-Aid fixes do we have to do into this asset that is already beyond its useful life, plus the impact of productivity, plus the inherent risk that's associated with that. And now you couple that with the long lead time for getting materials and getting some of this equipment replaced. I can't just react. It's like, and I can't even say, hey, for our next fiscal year, some of the stuff's like, for our next 3 fiscal years, we need to budget for replacement of these assets. Otherwise, we're going to be scrambling and paying a whole lot more extra to get pushed to the front of the line, right? Or we're going to be doing more Band-Aid fixes, throwing, more good money at bad, just because, we didn't get it replaced in time. I mean, we keep doing it to ourselves. That's the thing that gets me, is, we just keep shooting ourselves in the foot. All right, so execute and deliver. And I've been throwing up the CMMS, IWMS in there a lot. That really should be your central nervous system for your facilities department. Everything should be funneling through there, okay? And it had better be a robust, comprehensive system, because I need to make it quick, easy, and efficient to get data in, manage that data, get the data out. If I cannot do that, we need to talk. Come talk to me. Yep. I mean, and Michael's absolutely right. And I will absolutely stand up here and tell you, if you do not have a robust CMMS or IWMS in place, your facilities organization will not be successful. Guaranteed. You're going to continue to stay firefighting. Okay? No way to get out of it. Because I cannot easily gather that data that I need to justify the investment. And I can only live in spreadsheets so much. When I work with clients, it's one of the things is I'm doing my assessments and interviews and figuring out how they operate, and I'm hearing, I've got a spreadsheet for this, and I got a spreadsheet for that. I set it as a goal to get rid of their spreadsheets. It should reside in a database.
Add smart sheets to that too, would you?
No, that's the new CMMS. I've been wrestling with that with some folks. Yes, smart sheets. Oh no, I can do so much with smart sheets.
Yes, you can.
You can, but there's a wonderful CMMS that's right off the shelf that does all this stuff for you. Okay? So work smarter, people. We got it, because we got enough hard work to do already. But yeah, so definitely you need to have a good system in place. And with that, and this is where I said, am I putting more on the technicians, asking them, hey, I need this data? Yeah, I am. But I'm going to put mobile technology at their fingertips so that they can actually collect it in the field on the fly. All right? I'm going to go QR code my assets so that way they can walk up, scan it, create the work order like that, use talk to text, use drop downs, good to go. I don't want them coming back with their paper with their coffee stains and chicken scratch on it and handing it to our poor admin who has to try to translate. Okay? I don't want them coming back themselves, wrestling at the end of shift, for vying over those 2 computer workstations you all have where they're chicken pecking, putting this information in. No. I need them out, because again, we're shorthanded. I need them in the field turning wrenches. So the mobile technology, and it's a much easier sell today with technicians on using mobile devices than it was 5-7 years ago. I mean, I don't care how old they are. I love it when the old guys are teaching the young guys how to use this stuff. It's awesome. But you start seeing, hey, you can get O&M manuals, one-line diagrams, asset history. I mean, if you're going to troubleshoot a piece of equipment, what's the first thing you ask? Yeah, what's the history on it? Who touched it last? I mean, when I was a vibration data dog, I used to be a vibration analyst back in the day, and that was always, when I'd see a change in vibration, that was the first thing I would ask. Thankfully, the system that we had integrated with Maximo, and that's where I was able to see the work order history doing the vibration analysis. And sure enough, somebody changed the belts. They did it wrong, right? They introduced a failure mode because they changed the belts and they didn't do laser alignment, didn't do it right. but that's usually the first question you ask. So having that asset history, being able to look up parts. Ooh, I'm up on the roof and I can call up and say, oh, I need this part to replace this package unit. Do I have XYZ? I can request that part. And then you know what the warehouse is going to do? They're going to get a runner on their horse and send that part up to that engineer up on that roof. I don't want to have that engineer get off the roof and go down hunting for that part or having to go to the supply house. I need them turning wrenches. So we can work a heck of a lot smarter than what we do. All right, execute and deliver. So, talking about CMMS, IWMS, the first biggest hurdle to doing any type of implementation or improvement is quality of data. And that's usually where we spend a first good chunk of our time is helping clients get their data collected, clean it up, standardize it, right? Like that's why I joked earlier, rooftop unit, package unit. I'm going to go package unit because that's more universal, and now I can benchmark off of, oh, how much are we putting into package units? My capital replacement planning, how much life should I get out of a package unit, right? I can start using that common nomenclature, and that's where I have to standardize it across the board. So I want to make sure I get good data in, and that's where it even comes back to what we were talking about here on the mobile side. If they're doing QR codes and scanning the assets and I'm giving them drop downs and they're doing talk to text where they're putting in the comments of what they actually did instead of saying done. Right? So I want to know what they did because is that note for me? No, it's for them or their fellow facility folks that are coming along behind them saying, wait, didn't we just work on this 6 months ago? And I don't want to go back and look at John's notes and see done, fixed. No, I need good data. That's for them, so they can have that information, get the data in the system to get the data out. All right, and that's the thing that's unfortunately a lot of your systems. Oh yeah, we can get the data in. It's a bit cumbersome, but how many of you cannot figure out how to get the reports you want out of your CMMS, IWMS? Right. Hence, I have a spreadsheet for that. Right? How many spreadsheets do you have? You don't want to count, do you? You're pleading the fifth? Okay, all right. No self-incrimination here. But the thing is, I say that because you're not alone. You're not alone. I mean, you're just like, unfortunately, everybody else. I've got a spreadsheet for that. Then you get into dashboards. Now, and this is actually a pretty big push within the industry, and this is an opportunity, right? This is really an opportunity. I want to make sure I manage the message on these dashboards. So I'm going to have my operations dashboards. This is stuff that we use internally, right, within our department of how are we doing, we getting stuff done, where are our risks, what do we need to do things differently, okay? I'm using that to manage what's going on internally. But then when I start looking at management and the executive side, what matters to them? Dollars and cents, risk, right? Occupant satisfaction, right? Productivity. Those are all things that resonate with them. So guess what I'm going to be showing on that dashboard? Those perspectives that actually mean something to them. And again, I'm going to be honest and truthful with it. I want to manage the message. But if we're struggling in areas, I want to highlight that as, yeah, look, we're in the red here. This is why. So now I'm using that to justify investment in my facilities organization instead of going, no, look, everything's pretty. Don't look behind the curtain. Okay, we know that's not truth. That's not reality. Okay. Certain KPIs, so with the monitor and manage, I've talked about productivity. When I say, and I'm talking productivity of my own internal staff even, of facility staff, I'm one that I actually, how many of you, let me ask this question, I'll throw this out there, I'm going to bait you first. How many of you say that we basically tell our technicians or engineers that they have to have 6 hours of every day against work orders? Or something to that effect, right? You tell them, okay, you guys should have, you're trying to account for their time, you should have 6 hours, whatever, per day on work orders. Okay? Do you pretty consistently see 6 hours per day on work orders? No, really?
On paper.
On paper?
Years ago, I found that in project management, if you track activities starting on time, they'll all start on time. And they don't finish on time, but they start on time.
They don't track windshield time either.
Yeah, ooh, that's a good point. Windshield time, right? So let's hit that one too. What I see all too often is that whenever I hear, we make sure, because we want to track productivity, we make sure that our staff puts 6 hours they have 6 hours of work orders for their day. I'm not going to trust that worth of beans, right? Because they're just pencil whipping. It just might be electronically if they're doing it even via mobile. I don't want that. I'm not going to put that edict on them. What I'm going to have is, I want what you're doing to be on work orders, even if I have administrative work orders for staff training, meetings, etc. But I need to see where they're spending their time. A lot of your mobile devices for these CMMS systems have a start-stop timer. I'm going to use that because I would rather see actuals, and because I need to see where we're wasting time, not that, hey, I accounted for 6 hours of their time. I can't stand on that. I want actuals. And I can then I can usually qualify that time as windshield time. So how much? So if I get a work order and I got a roll, like we were just in the Pro FM class with Keith with Polk County, he's like the average. He had some of his techs. The average number of miles per work order was 48 miles per work order. Now I better have a system that says, okay, well, what the heck else can that technician do within that area? So that 48 miles they got to drive, I'm going to get as many birds with one stone as I can. But windshield time is crucially important because if they're behind the steering wheel, they're not turning wrenches. So you can capture that time. And what always irked me is seeing, okay, well, how much time are they running to the supply house or to the stock room? That's wasted downtime. I can pay a runner a lot less money per hour to do some of that. Now, then I'll get the argument, well, but they don't know what they're looking for. Then educate them as a technician, as an engineer, educate them as to what they need. And this is where the beauty of getting stuff online is I can now start ordering that stuff online from the supply house. Heck, most of them are delivering it for you, right? So it's just a matter of us climbing out on top of this and working smarter, taking advantage of technology. We have to. But I'm going to be one that on productivity, I'm looking to 90 to 100% of their time against work orders. 1984 Big Brother, right? It's not, no. I just need to be able to see where are we spending our time, where are we wasting our time. That's it. And if I'm using like a mobile CMMS and I'm making sure I'm capturing service requests, it's easy for me to be able to capture that time against work orders, right? Start stop timer, scanning QR codes, etc. I make it a matter of seconds or a minute or less to actually execute that work order in the system. So we have to work smarter. Completion. Yes, I'm going to monitor our completion, and I've got to make sure we're being legit about that too. So are we getting our PMs complete? I want to break that down by priority because I'd better get my priority 1s, priority 2s done. I'd probably start slipping on my priority 3s, 4s, and 5s. But I want to make sure I'm breaking that down, both on my PM, on my CM, on my service requests, on my projects, however y'all want to break out those work order types. And again, this is just a total side note. On your work order types, you only need like a handful. Like seriously, CM, corrective work order, PM, preventive maintenance, and inspections. You can throw PDM in there if you want to, unless you want to pull that out separately. So predictive maintenance, projects, I'll do admin, and then service requests. That's it. Because I walk in and I've got some customers that we go in and they got like 37 different work order types. And I'm like, well, what's the difference between this and this? And I cannot benchmark, I can't do KPIs off that stuff. So there's other ways to capture this data you're trying to capture by these different work order types. There's other means to do that. It's just a matter of, again, what do I want to get out of the system? What am I trying to monitor and manage? And then let's make sure we're getting the data in there in a way that's easy for us to capture that. And then ultimately efficiency. So again, if I'm seeing 48 miles per work order, gosh, how can I optimize? I can't make that location any closer, so I can't change that. But can I change what we're getting done? Because if I can get more work orders done with that one trip, am I able to reduce that average to 36 miles? Okay, that's 25% improvement. I'll take that. Right? You set up a remote office. You start talking public entities, right? We got cities, counties, right? You start talking, I got Parks and Rec. Okay, how many? We have 150 buildings, right? How many of those are pump houses or stations like that? They're a small building out in the middle of nowhere. So you are definitely spending some time on the road, but are we being efficient in routes that we're setting up and executing PMs and inspections? That also drives us to wanting to be more on the planned maintenance side, because now if I'm doing reactive, I have to go do that one-off shot. Versus if I can do my PMs, I can set up a smart route, right? But we've got to get to that side of the fence. Again, that's a whole nother presentation. Monitoring downtime, and again, depends on how you want to track this. To me, hot and cold calls, right? If I'm looking at you just building occupancy, if we're talking about facility operations, I might take it down to assets, or if I've gone through and I've applied a criticality to my assets, okay, well maybe on my priority one assets, and I usually will define my priority one criticality as direct impact to productivity. If it goes down, we're absolutely impacting productivity in that space, even if it's, again, air handler, chiller. I might say, okay, chiller goes down, we have no chilled water. We're toast, we're dead. Especially here in Orlando, that's a bad thing. But if I have an air handler go down and I've already got another air handler on that floor, well, that's a priority too, because it's not a direct impact to productivity in the sense of we're down, we can't do work. It's an indirect impact, so I've got reduced capacity. So that would be a priority too. So I might be breaking up my downtime by that. Show me what my uptime or downtime is by my priority one, priority two assets. And then I put mean time as in mean time to review service request, mean time to respond, mean time to complete, right? Those are all useful stats that I can track. And it's simple, especially if I know when that request comes in, we triage it, or ideally even auto route that to technicians or shops, and then they respond on site, starting the timer, and then, okay, I gotta go get parts, or I've gotta wait for materials, which we'll be waiting for months now, depending, right? I gotta get materials so I can put that work order on hold, so I can track how long are we having, what's our average duration of having to have a work order sit waiting for material? Because now I've also got management breathing down my neck, why can't we get this stuff done? I can't get the supplies. And look, here's the average time that work orders are sitting on hold because they're waiting for material. I can show that. I can't affect the supply chain. Now what that does, it says, well, okay, that's not acceptable. Okay, well, why are we having to wait for this? I'm having to do a repair on an asset that's well beyond its useful life. If I were to replace that, we shouldn't have this problem. Okay, so again, justification. All right, communicate value. So I like looking at it as up, out, and down. How do we communicate this value proposition that we've been trying to put together up, so up to the executive team? Like I said earlier, what do they care about? Risk and revenue, right? Risk and cost. So whatever we're doing, I want to make sure I translate into that language that resonates with them. I can't just go in and say, hey, this is broke, I need $200,000, because all they're going to hear is $200,000. What they need to hear is, hey, this is limping along, this is the impact and the risk to our production, to our office space, to our customers. There's a cost associated with that. And this is what it's going to take to mitigate that risk, that impact. Okay? Otherwise, they're going to see us as that necessary evil. Other departments and stakeholders, so managing out and across the organization. You've got those other department heads that we support, right? I mean, facilities is a support entity. We exist to help them get their jobs done. Well, how are we impacting their productivity? What is their occupant satisfaction? Because they're wrestling with the same thing you are. They're trying to hire people, trying to retain people. Well, okay, well, what can we do as facilities to make their job easier? And I can have those honest conversations with them, and out of that might even identify some other KPIs that we want to track, so that way we can show how we as a support entity are supporting those other stakeholders and departments to get what they need to be successful. And then now I'm hopefully winning them over as champions for facilities. So they're pleading our case on our behalf, because they're like, no, these guys are helping me out. They do need that budget. Okay? And then managing down. We talked about this in the Pro-FM session before here of, bringing people on. How do I get my facility staff to stay with us? Get them to see the big picture. Get them to see the value of what they do. They don't just clean toilets and empty trash. They don't just turn wrenches and replace filters. They're providing a safe, healthy, productive work environment. A place that people want to come to work. Okay? So that's where we need to work with our teams, and we'll hit that here in the next slide, to see that big picture. So with that, you've got the marketing and the selling. Again, this could be a whole nother presentation in itself. But a marketing plan for facilities. Okay, I remember the first time that I ran across that as a concept of, okay, facilities department, you should have a marketing plan. I thought that was the craziest thing in the world. Because in facilities, how many of us in facilities love salespeople? Okay, how many of you are salespeople? All right. But again, I said earlier, we are all always selling. So if any of you in the biz dev environment, you know that you better have a marketing plan. How are you going to go about selling what your wares? Same thing. So with that, I want to monitor, well, what are my touch points? Where are we interacting with the different customers, those that are up and across the organization? What are those touch points? My service center desk, right, my call center desk, my facilities folks that's going out. I mean, what soft skills am I giving them to engage and sell the value? That's where we have the elevator speech there. What ways am I equipping my staff to engage and promote the value of facilities every time they're interacting with the customers? And that's more of an active approach. You go with the passive approach. Now I'm talking about, okay, they go to my service request page to submit a service request. I might throw some KPIs up there. I might have other, I'll say value proposition statements that are showing this is who we are, this is what we value as facilities, that's showing that we are there to support them. We're all about productivity. We're all about mitigating risk. Whatever it is that you guys come up with as your vision mission statement in your facilities department, get that on that service request page. I might even use that page to highlight, a technician just got this new certification, right? Or I'll keep picking on ProFM. Somebody just got their ProFM certification. Wait, there's certifications in facilities? What's that about, right? I'm using that as a very passive opportunity to educate those folks that we support that, we're not just glorified janitors. Because most of them have no idea what we do. And that's okay. But if I can show them, I don't necessarily know what they do, but if I can show them that, look, it takes skilled, value-added people to do this job, they might have a little bit more appreciation for what we do, and it might make it easier for us to get the resources that we need, right? I'm passively selling the value of our organization, just in those different touch points. Automated notifications to the customers. I mean, they put in a service request. What does a customer want to know? I've been heard and I'm going to be taken care of. Okay, we get their service request. They automatically get that thing saying, hey, thank you for submitting your service request. We will review and prioritize and respond to it as soon as possible. Whatever, however you want to frame that up. When you issue that work order assigned to somebody, I'm going to let them know, hey, this has been assigned to John. He's scheduled to take care of it on Friday. Cool. I'd rather have John here today, but you know what? I at least know he'll be here tomorrow. Okay, I can live with that. Right? Now they're not calling you or putting in another request because I still haven't heard anything. Right? Happens all the time. And then, of course, when it gets completed, I want to send them another automated notification that says, we've completed your service request. Please let us know if it wasn't to your satisfaction. And oh, by the way, would you mind taking our survey? Because how many times does it happen when we go in and our technician goes in there, thinks that they fixed the problem, and maybe they did fix something, but the customer's going, no, they didn't. Well, I want that feedback mechanism because I want them to know that we're taking care of them, because I want them to be productive, right? Because if they have a bad opinion, a bad view of facilities, it's going to be a lot harder. It's like me pushing that boulder uphill. It's going to be a lot harder for me to sell our value statement and solicit more resources if they're going, these guys don't know what they're doing. I mean, my joke is, and some of you guys heard me say that, like, I don't know what these guys do. I always see two guys driving around in a truck. Okay. Yeah, well, we probably do too much of that, but it's that part of that educating, showing that we are providing value to the organization. Okay.
It's always good though if they're moving and not stopped at a picnic.
That is true. That is true. So with that, we've got just a few minutes left. Questions. And if you guys scan that basically is just download my contact info. So if you want to email me, and I can send you this presentation, whatever I can do to help you out. I will not bug you. I will not sell the information. It's just again, I'm just here to try to equip and educate. Questions? All right. Most of you stayed awake, so that's good.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
In my context, for my role, I'm a subcontractor.
Mm-hmm.
We have our spaces all at universities,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the universities are old and need a lot of work. And so our side of the house, our AC unit will go out,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not our AC unit.
Yep.
So how do I navigate that with other entities?
So you're a subcon. Are you a tenant for that?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a tenant for that AC. Is there anything in the contract with you as a tenant as to what the requirements are for that space occupancy?
It just says that they'll update it in maintenance as needed, basically.
Okay. All right. I'd want to dig into the contract, or maybe the next time you guys get a chance to rework that, because this is where you start going more towards that performance-based, in the sense of, okay, we will not, it's not the, we'll keep it running. What does that mean, right? It's like, hey, your car's going to get you there. AC doesn't work, and you got the check engine light on, but it got you there, right? Just a little slow. I would go more of the performance base of, you will maintain, this temperature, this humidity, this type of operating space requirements during these hours. And that's what I'm seeing a lot more in your lease agreements is, here's the requirements of operations. How y'all get that done? That's on you, right? That's where the direction I would recommend going, so you can, and then you can start tracking, okay, well, here's the impacts and that you've had in not maintaining that space. How quickly are they responding? Is there an SLA with how quickly they will, basically return you back to that requirement of space temperature, let's say. And then, if they start breaching that, now let's say, well, do we get deducts in our lease payments? I mean, so those things should be, again, it goes more performance-based at that point. Okay, yes, ma'am.
How do you sell it to the staff about tracking your time? Even that start and stop timer,
Mm-hmm.
that was not a selling point. It's hard, they're like, well, now you're just trying to make sure I'm working.
Yeah, and that,
Sell it.
like I said, 7 years ago, that was absolutely, and I would joke with them. They're like, oh, you're just trying to track us. And I'm like, what do you mean? Google's already doing that. What do you, and I had one guy, you're just going to put a chip in us. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm going to start with you. Now it's a lot easier to sell on, you can make it where, hey, it is a requirement for you to put in labor, and I don't even give you the choice to manually type in your labor. You have to use the timer.
That's how we do it.
Right? So you can go and make that, basically it's just a requirement. And why is that? Because we all know, and this is usually where that conversation starts with, you're just trying to track me to, well, do we need more people? Yes. Do we need more resources? Yes. Jerry Maguire, help me help you, right? I need that data to be able to prove the point. And once they start getting that, most of them are okay. You will have your crusty curmudgeon that just flat out says, no way, but that's usually the person still using the flip phone because they don't want to be tracked by anybody. Okay? They're out there, we know that. But it is an easier sell these days. But I also sell them on the fact of going mobile to begin with, of the value that they gain and the information that's at their fingertips. And then as part of that, yeah, you're using that start-stop timer. So it's all part of the selling. Okay. Other questions? And I'll stick around for a few minutes as well. Okay. How many of y'all going to Baltimore then in the spring? Okay. All right. Well, we should see you there then. Awesome. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.